Hey, welcome back everybody to another episode of Twisted Tuesdays. Today I am going to be talking about a twisted subject that is very, very common that I see as a chiropractor here in my office. And I just had a new patient today who has a lot of disc degeneration in her neck, which has been causing her to have neck pain and left shoulder pain for a few years now. And she's tried everything under the sun, so I thought it would be interesting tonight for our episode of Twisted Tuesday to talk about disc degeneration and spine degeneration and how can you tell if you have it, and if you do have it or you know somebody who does, most likely you will, because this is something extremely common that I see in my office. By the age of 60, about 90% of people will have some level of spine disease or spine degeneration, and the disc is just one of the things that can fall apart in our spine. So here we have an example of on the computer screen. This is, let's just call that our lower back, our lumbar spine. This represents up here a very normal part of our spine. So our spine consists of bones, and it also consists of discs. Bones are hard and they don't bend or twist or anything. Discs are very rubbery and they allow us to bend over, touch our toes, to look up and reach the ceiling. That flexibility comes from our discs. So like you see right here, we have a normal vertebrae, a bone right above it. In between, it's kind of like an Oreo cookie. You have a nice cream center. That's what the disc is right there. And it's made out of mostly water. And it's held together. It's kind of like jelly, like in a jelly donut. And then on the outside of the disc, there's a real thick fibrous tissue that acts kind of like a rubber tire for your bike. It holds all of that jelly, all that squishy water inside. Now, if we damage that disc, what happens is that jelly wants to get on the outside. We don't want it to get on the outside because that creates a lot of pain and neurological issues. So luckily, by the time people come in and see me, they don't typically have a disastrous situation where I need to send them out for surgery. It's actually a level of degeneration that we take care of here at the office. So if you have nerve pain or lower back pain and it's radiating into your arms or down your legs or anything like that, or even up into your head, come in, get checked out. We can do x-rays to look for, see if you have normal spacing between your bones. I can also order MRIs. You don't have to go through anybody else. I can order those for you, and we'll take a little look at some MRIs in just a second. So as we mature and age, we can and should maintain healthy spine. People say, oh doc, I'm old, I should expect to see some damage. No, you shouldn't. That's like going to your dentist and saying, oh, you know, I'm just old, that's why I have cavities. Not really. Our bodies are capable of maintaining health as long as we don't traumatize it. And we can traumatize our discs through trauma, like car crashes, football players, tackling, horseback riders. The military typically will destroy your discs. So we can see that it's not necessarily just us falling apart. That's not true. Our spine should stay healthy throughout our entire life. It's the physical trauma, like I mentioned, that can squish that disc and impact it so hard that it pops like a balloon. Or in other ways, it's metabolic as well. Metabolic meaning, what are we doing to ourselves on the inside? Are we overweight? Being overweight tremendously affects the health of our discs, because they act like the little rubber cushions in between those two hard bones. If we're overweight, we're crushing all of that water that's in the jelly and we're compacting it, which leads to the disc bulging out. Okay? So this shows us the levels of degeneration that we can have in the spine. Again, this is a normal disc, vertebrae, and then this little hole right here, there would be one here if there was another vertebrae on top, but they didn't draw that in. So this little hole represents something very important. That's where our spinal nerves come out of. So right behind here, this little channel between the backbones and the front bone, that's where all of our spinal cord sits. And then these little holes here are where the nerves come out. So the spinal cord is a big thick root, and then through these holes come out little branches, and they go to different parts of our body. So when our discs are nice and fat and fluffy, it keeps that hole nice and big. But as the disc damage, not only will we see the disc deform and change shape, but we also need to understand that this hole gets a lot smaller. So instead of having a big opening where that nerve sits, now the nerve is being crushed because we don't have that disc keeping that hole open. All right? So obviously what people know out there when patients come in and talk to me about disc degeneration, they'll use two terms typically. They'll say, I have a bulge disc, I have a slip disc, which I don't like that term because a slip disc isn't really accurate. It's a misnomer. And then they also say herniated disc. But typically people know bulge, oh, I got a bulge disc or I have a slip disc. Okay. So what that is, that's just the different degrees of our degeneration. So if we don't treat our spines like we would treat our teeth, like every day we wake up, we brush our teeth, you know, we floss our teeth, we work on keeping these bones healthy, right? We should be doing the same with our spines. Our spines are tremendously powerful. The amount of power that goes through our spine because of the muscles and the things, it's tremendous. It's hundreds and hundreds of pounds of pressure being put through our vertebrae every day. It's quite unique. So anyways, at the first level of degeneration, we'll see a little bit of water loss, a little bit of gapping that decreases so the vertebrae come closer together. And then if we are traumatizing ourselves, like if we're a football player and we take a hit, that will start the beginning process called bulge. So a bulge disc is something that I see most of the time. It will create very localized pain, but also at the same time, that little bulge can also push on our spinal cord or our spinal nerve root that's coming out of that little hole that I was talking about, and that's what's sending pain down the legs or down the arms. And that's something I treat all the time at my office. That's literally what a chiropractor's job is to do. Okay, is to treat this and treat it uniquely. So you wouldn't adjust somebody or you wouldn't use therapy on somebody that has a disc bulge and treat them like a normal person. And that's a common mistake people make. Disc bulges are treated very uniquely here at the office, and we have great results with it because we treat them for what it is and not trying to treat them like they're everybody else. Okay? If we don't take care of those disc bulges, or if the person continues traumatizing their body, then that little bit of a bulge then turns into a big bulge, and that's where surgery typically will come into play. Once the disc bulges out so far, you can no longer have therapy on it and try to push and reduce the size of that bulge. Once it's popped out beyond this distance, you're basically a candidate for surgery at that point. There are a few things I can do just to relieve the pain, but the condition will stay the same. Okay, so yes, there is a time where you would come in and I can work on your muscles and your flexibility and really treat the surrounding area as well. Because you think that if we have pain in this section, you think the ones above and below will also start to have issues as well, because they took the same hit. So it's nice that we can also treat the areas above and below an area like this. Same with fusions. If you are a person with a spinal fusion, you have rods and screws in your body, like my wife Megan. Okay, obviously we don't adjust the fusion because you can't, because it's physically impossible and you shouldn't. But the vertebrae above and below, they are the next ones that typically will degenerate fast because it doesn't have the normal function, because this is all locked up now. So even if you have a spinal fusion, you can still be treated through chiropractic. Now you want to choose your chiropractor very wisely, okay? Because not everybody has a wife like I have, where I've adjusted her from the time that I met her and married her all the way through her spinal fusion, and now even more so because she needs it more now than she did even before surgery. So as long as you have a chiro that knows what he's doing, adjusting around fused areas and disc bulges is actually incredibly beneficial. Okay? So this is where I find most of my patients, and then these are the ones that I say, hey, it's too late for anything for this bulge disc. I can help above and below, but this is definitely a surgery consult that you need to make. I'm not against surgeries. I'm not against major medical when it's used appropriately. So that's also a nice thing you should listen for when you talk to your chiropractor. I don't think I can solve everything. Obviously, I'm limited, but I can help you with the disc bulges and nerve pain for sure. That's what I'm very good at.
Right?
Okay. All right. So again, if we're overloading the disc with too much weight, or we have bad metabolic diseases, things happening on the inside such as diabetes, that can dry out our tissues very quickly and not allow our disc to reabsorb water. That's why when we fall asleep at night and we wake up and we measure ourselves, we're the tallest in the morning, and then if you compare your height in the afternoon or in the evening, you're shorter. Mm-hmm. Why? It's because of the fluid in the disc. As you lay down, all that fluid comes back into the discs, and then when you stand up and go throughout your day, all of that pressure is slowly squeezing some of that water out of the disc, and so you shrink throughout the day. You go to sleep, you get a little bit taller. You walk throughout the day and sit all day, and that squishes you and makes you a little bit shorter. So it's very cool. Our body is very dynamic. It's always up to something. All right, so now that you have a basic understanding of disc degeneration, it took me 4 years to study this, and I just taught you in 10 minutes, so that's pretty cool. All right, let's go to some real-life MRI examples.
That is a chaotic computer screen.
Okay, so this is an MRI image of somebody's neck. They're looking towards me. This is the back of their neck, and this is the front of their neck, and this is where their mouth is, okay? That's their cerebellum right there on the MRI. So yes, chiropractors, we can read MRIs, and we can also order MRIs, at least in the state of Arizona. So that, you know, if you have an MRI and you have some questions, you can bring that in. I'll sit down. That's what I just did with my patient today. She brought in a bunch of MRIs and wanted a 50th opinion, which is awesome. I'm always for a different opinion. She said, "What can you do?" And I said, "Well, these are the 3 things I do differently." She's like, "Nobody ever mentioned that to me." I was like, "Yeah, it happens." Okay. So anyways, back to this person. This black line that you see right there, that's the spinal cord. Remember, the spinal cord connects our brain to the rest of our body. It's very important, and that's why the body has encased it in bone. So if you think about it, our skull, what is that encasing? It's encasing our brain. Then our spinal cord, the basic structure that keeps us upright when we stand, that's solely specific for keeping the spinal cord protected. So nature knows what's important. If it's important, it'll encase it in bone, okay? So anyways, these little white squares that you see right there, those are the bones. Those are the vertebrae. And then in between those vertebrae, these dark areas on an MRI are where all that water and disc is. So if you look for bulge disc, remember bulge disc typically will shoot out the back. So this is the back of the neck, this is the front, so they like to go that way. This disc right there between these 2 bones, that's looking pretty good. And you can see this white line right there, how it's continuous. That's a good sign. That's the cerebral spinal fluid. We have fluid in our spinal cord area to act like a cushion. It's kind of like putting bubble wrap around something before you put it in a box to ship it. That cerebral spinal fluid acts as a shock absorber. And so we want lots of that around our nerves to keep it floating in water. As we come down between these 2 bones, that disc is looking all right. I can see a little bit of a bulge, but it's not too bad. And then this is where we get into the trouble area. And this was just like the patient that came in today. Between these 2 areas, you can see, something doesn't look the same, does it? You can see that that disc is bulging out, and it's actually starting to push onto the spinal cord. So what kind of symptoms will this person have? Well, at this level, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 and 5, and 5 and 6. That's all upper trap and upper shoulder. So if this disc is bulging and hitting that nerve, this patient's going to have severe pain in this area. They will also experience muscle weakness, because our muscles are only as strong as the nerve impulse that supplies it. So if I go and karate chop somebody in the neck and I damage their nerves, their whole arm goes weak. Not because I did anything special, but I just interrupted the signal from the nerve being put into the muscle. If I was to fight a big muscle builder guy, I'd punch him in the nerve. He has way too much muscle. I can shut all of those muscles off just by affecting his nervous system. So, I don't know. That's kind of morbid, but I wouldn't punch him in the muscle because he has lots of it. I'd punch him in the nerves. Okay? I won't explain where to punch somebody.
Yeah, don't do
I'm
that.
like, Okay. So anyways, this person would have continuous pain throughout their upper neck and down their upper arm. Also at the same time, 4, 5, and 6 is where we do most of our looking down and looking up. So that every time this person looks down to check text messages or to read a book or, sitting on an airplane
Literally
where
anything.
it pushes you forward, that's going to create that bulge to be even worse. So there's a lot of things that we do to ourselves throughout the day that can make disc degeneration a lot worse. And so that's what I pride myself in doing, is actually explaining to people how we can avoid surgery and unnecessary pain and numbness and tingling and sharpness and lightening and weakness just by changing the way we use our bodies, basically. Okay?
Feels like searing hot lava shooting down your
Megan
arms.
describes her nerve pain as searing hot lava. It's very true. Everybody feels a little bit different, but it all comes back
Or
to
like
this.
a million fire ants trying to bite you all at once.
So that's an example of the neck. Let's look down in the lower back, which is another extremely common area where disc degeneration happens. All right. So this is the lower back. We call those lumbar vertebrae. Again, this patient is looking towards me. So this is the belly button area, let's just say. And then this is where that person's butt should be. They have no acetol. They suffer from no acetol disease. There's no junk in that trunk.
Is this just some image you pulled off online?
I just found that. Yeah, this is not a patient of mine. Okay? That person has no butt. Okay, that's not the
So
point.
that would be my MRI. Got
That's
it.
Megan's MRI. Actually, it looks like a female. It looks like there's a uterus right there. Anyways, doesn't matter. We're not talking about butts.
Okay.
We're talking about that guy and that guy. Okay, so this is an example, an MRI of the lower back of, again, walking through the same thing that we did before. Looking above, you can see these two squares. I call them marshmallows. Those are our vertebrae, so those are bones. And then in between, we have this nice, real thick rubber, like shock absorber, which is the disc. So these guys are looking really good. They look nice and clean. Coming down now, this is vertebrae 4, and this is vertebrae 5. In between here, we're looking at this. You see that there's even a color change. It's darker, right? So we can tell that this is not being put under the same amount of wear and tear as the ones above and below. So that's a good indicator that there may be some disc degeneration going on. If we take a peek out towards the back side where our spinal cord is right here, we can see that this disc between 4 and 5, it's in the disc bulge stage. And this is something that is therapeutically you can correct. Now this guy between L5 and S1, this guy is in the herniated stage. It's not a bulge anymore. It's herniated. It means it is no longer structurally sound, and it can no longer be rehabilitated through chiropractic, physical therapy, exercise, those types of things. This guy right here, that's definitely a surgical candidate if their health permits it. Okay, because if
What
you can
is
see,
the surgery that you do? Do they do a fusion or do they do a disc replacement?
So there's
So
a lot
kind
of
of the same
different surgeries out there. One is that they can actually go in and cut that and try to remove the disc and put a fake one in, and then they'll put screws and a rod to kind of keep things in place. There's a lot of different options out there, so it's always nice to
speaking
consult.
from experience of fusions, you don't want to do it, so take care of your freaking discs.
Yeah. So some people think, like Megan just mentioned, oh, if I just have the surgery, all my pain goes away, it'll fix everything. No, there's no guarantee when it comes to surgeries. I've had patients with great results. Mm-hmm. I've had patients that can't really tell. They basically swapped one set of pain for a new set of pain. And then there's my other category of patients that are worse, like extremely worse, not okay, worse.
So make sure you find a really good surgeon.
Yeah, and I've had patients that had started with a fusion in one segment, and then they had to expand the fusion, and then they had to get another fusion, because once you start freezing parts that are supposed to move, the body starts to fall apart rather quickly. Okay, so again, in this category, this person, I mean, if they're definitely afraid of surgery, there are things that I can do to help maintain and limit the amount of pain that they're experiencing, but in no way would I guarantee that there would be a reversal of the condition. It's just physically impossible at that point. So this type of person, what kind of issues could they have? Definitely hot searing pain going down the back of their legs all the way down into their toes. Muscle weakness. A group of muscles may atrophy. Atrophy means they just naturally get smaller because the nerve can no longer send a nice strong signal to the muscle. When the nerves don't talk to muscles, the muscles go to sleep. Basically, they waste away because they're not being used. Our body only keeps parts and pieces that actually are functioning. If it doesn't function or is not being correctly impulsed by the nervous system, then the body will just get rid of it. It's useless. So I have a patient right now who has fusions in his back, and his whole left side of his leg is a lot smaller than the right side. His right side is getting good nerve impulses. The left side is being pinched, and it can't send that signal down. And so not only is he experiencing severe pain all the time at the site of his fusion, but now he's starting to have extremity issues as well, legs and arms and stuff like that. So again, this is something that I see quite often. If you guys have an MRI or you have an MRI report or you need an MRI, come in. I can either read it if you have one, or I can send you out to get one if you think you have nerve pain. First thing we would definitely do is just take an x-ray. An x-ray is cheap, easy, fast. I can see it within seconds to see if you possibly do need a higher level imaging, which would be MRI. I just fill out the form, send you over to an imaging center, and then they send me back the discs. And then we'll talk about what is treatable, and then maybe if you need a surgical contact or a referral, I can send you to somebody. I know a lot of physicians out there and that do great work, so it's always nice to have
Shout out to Dr. Carla.
Yeah. So the doctors that performed Megan's spinal fusion surgery come from the Barrow's Brain and Spine, and Dr. Carla. An amazing team that did amazing work on my wife. So again,
and Dr. Bowl, he's about to finish his residency.
Dr. Bowl as well. So there's always a place and time. Like I said, I don't think I can solve everything, and there's a lot of really great docs with very specialized training and tools and instruments, and I respect and love them for what they do. So again, I'm all for whatever is best for you, whatever is best for the patient. I don't have an ego. I try to keep that at the house. When I come to work, it's all about the patient. So hopefully by watching this video, you guys can understand that I have your best interest at mind. I'm always trying to teach something. That's what a doctor is. A doctor is a teacher, and we can perform some pretty cool stuff sometimes, but our main goal is to educate you so that you can understand what it takes and how to live a happy, healthy life. So anyways, again, disc bulges are quite common. I see them a lot. It doesn't mean that we all need them or we all should have them. Just taking care of ourselves, making sure that we listen to our bodies. So if our body is saying, ow, I have pain, there's a reason. Come in, let me examine you, let me take a look, and I can tell you what your body's trying to tell you. I've just been trained to understand what these symptoms are and what they mean, and it's also helpful that we can use imaging, so you don't have to take my word for it. I can just point and say, look, that's where your problem's coming from. So again, thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Twisted Tuesdays. I hope you learned something interesting. If you don't need this information now, you will later. Avoid a trip to the ER and just come in and take care of your issues before they become things that I'll have to send you for surgery for. So, we're good.
That's it.